What's up, everybody? It's John Barrows of J Barrows Consulting. Make it happen Mondays. Hope you all had a great weekend and are ready to kick off the week strong and crush it this week as usual. Today, I wanted to chat a little bit about work ethic, and I'll tell you a reason why. But as always, if you have questions, feel free to chime in at any time. I will talk about anything, but I'd like to pick themes here that are on my mind and things that I think we can all learn from. So work ethic to me is becoming something I'm acutely aware of these days. And it came up the other day because I do a lot of trainings, obviously on site. And, you know, usually they're, 8:30 to 4:30, something like that. And then I hang out afterwards and talk to some of the reps. And then, maybe I'll check up on some of my emails before I head back to the airport or something like that. And inevitably, I usually I stay in the conference room for a little while, and I leave the office around, 6 o'clock, something like that, 5:30, 6 o'clock. And I cannot tell you the last time I went into an organization, did a training, and left at 6 o'clock, and there was more than one or two people still left in the office. And that's been a trend that I've been noticing as far as people, out like 5 o'clock, it's a ghost town, right? But it actually hit me recently when I was talking about how to, when we were doing prospecting and some tips on things you can do and all that other stuff. And one of the things that I usually recommend is during your downtime, weekends or something like that, have a list of your top accounts in a spreadsheet, kind of poke around on their websites when you're watching the news or something, watching football or whatever. Or a dumb movie and just doing mindless activities. You can just kind of poke around and prep for the week, or spending Sunday night preparing for the week, or, just doing off-hour shit. And what struck me is as I was suggesting these, I felt uncomfortable. I felt uncomfortable telling people that they had to work off hours because of the feedback or I guess based on just what I've been seeing out there and talking to other managers about. And it was kind of like I felt guilty about telling reps that you have to work off hours. You have to do that to be successful. So I paused when I was saying that, and it really disappointed me that I had to pause because I didn't want to offend people to let them know that really in order to be successful, you got to work your ass off. I have 12 guidelines to success. I got my 12 guiding principles right here. And literally the first one is work smart and hard. Everybody talks about working smart and all that other stuff, which is fine. But really the key to success is legitimately working your ass off. I mean, people ask me all the time, hey, John, you've gotten to a really good point in your career and it looks like you've been super successful. What's the secret, man? And literally I tell them every single time, working your ass off. That's it. I'm not the smartest kid out there by any stretch of the imagination, and I don't know a ton, but I work my ass off, and that's how I've gotten to where I am. I remember when my first company was acquired, and we were going through this process with this new organization. It was this leadership training and all this stuff, and they asked you to, hey, write down what are your guidelines, and effectively it was my 12 guidelines to success or my 12 guiding principles, and I already had them. So the exercise was like 3 or 4 of us, and we were going through. I was walking reps, the people through. Okay, here's what my guidelines are, and this is what I share with my team. Not to say that they have to do these. It's just when they get feedback from me, this is where it comes from, and I think it's a very valuable exercise for any manager to go through. And literally, the first one on the list is work smart and hard. And so they asked me to present in front of the entire group on those guidelines. I was like, all right, great. So as I'm going through, the first one comes out, I said, work smart and hard, show up early, stay late. And a woman reaches in, she's like, oh, you can't ask people to do that. You can't ask them to work, come in early into the office and stay late. And, never mind that was more of a mentality rather than an actuality. I didn't say you have to show up at 6 o'clock in the morning and you have to stay until 8 o'clock at night. I said mentally show up early and stay late. Now, however you do that, that's fine with me. But she was really like, you can't ask people to do that. And I'm like, why not? And she's like, well, because they get paid and do this and da da da. I'm like, well, yeah, but how do you expect somebody to be successful in their careers if you don't push them to be better than what they currently are? And how do you expect to get better than what you are without putting in that type of effort? And when I tell you, I want to say 80% of the people, and now mind you, this was a huge corporation that was very stodgy and kind of had their own ways of doing things, and probably a lot of hourly workers there as well. So I understand that. But I mean, 80% of the people there were just shredding me, absolutely shredding me. By the way, this was like within 2 months of us being acquired, I'm pretty much telling everybody, all these managers and executives, that they're wrong and they're stupid, and having a full-blown argument about this, because I fundamentally believe that you have to put in the effort in order to be successful in anything. All right. And so that's why I talk about show up early, stay late. When I was my first job, my first company, Thrive Networks, I was the VP of sales. I was 24 years old. I was the VP of sales and marketing. And I didn't know much, but I knew that I could work harder than everybody else. And so what I did was, that's what I did. I made more phone calls than everybody else. I went to more events than everybody else. I went on more meetings than everybody else. And to me, that was the one thing I could control. I could control my effort. You know, you've heard me talk about this before. You know, I'm working with my daughter here to figure out, hey, what can we control? Focus on what you can control. And we came up with the acronym EAT: effort, attitude, and how you treat people, right? And effort is the number one thing there, because that's what you can control. You can't control what the client does. You can't control what the market's doing. You can't even control how your boss treats you. What you can control is how hard you work. And so I want to kind of share that. I know there's a lot of people out there who are working their asses off, but I want to share my frustration, and a huge frustration of a lot of the managers that I'm seeing out there, of the work ethic that is lacking these days. And also the expectation of, if you just put in the basics, that you're going to get to the next level. That's why I personally hate tenure and those type of bullshit things where you get the pay raises based on how long you've worked at a company. To me, that's absolutely ridiculous. You shouldn't get a pay raise unless you're better than you were previously. So this whole idea of these merit raises once a year, pisses me off. So you can control how hard you work, and you can control the effort and your attitude that you put into that work. There's I was doing a little bit of research and prep before this of there's Malcolm Gladwell, who wrote Outliers, and he talks about the 10,000 hour rule, and how in order to be an expert at anything, you have to put 10,000 hours of practice into it. Now, I know that has been debunked by a whole bunch of different people. And I was reading here how he says it's been misconstrued. He said the point is simply that natural ability requires a huge investment of time in order to be made manifest, which I agree with. Now, 10,000 hours, whatever, I pick a number. The other book that it brought me to, which I'm going to read now because I've been reading it right before this Make It Happen Monday session, is one by Cal Newport called So Good They Can't Ignore You. And I absolutely love this one. It's just reading some of the summary here. And he talks about, like, don't just follow your passion. That's a terrible thing to tell anybody. Find your passion. Because I don't know about you. I didn't know what I was passionate about when I was in my 20s. I mean, sure, partying with my friends, drinking beer, that type of stuff. But I didn't know what I was passionate about. So for me to follow my passion, I probably would have gone and been an artist and been, poor on the streets at this point or whatever. But it's find your passion and he talks here about have a craftsman mindset. So instead of having a passion mindset, have a craftsman mindset. And that's where you focus relentlessly on what value you're offering the world. And it says this stands in direct contrast to the much more common passion mindset, which is as you focus on what the value the world is offering you. I couldn't agree with that more. So that's why I'm buying this book and I'm reading it, because the whole idea of so good they can't ignore you, that's the idea from a management standpoint that I look for, which is have that rep. Instead of, hey, when am I going to get a promotion? Work your ass off to the point where they look at you and say, I can't ignore this kid. This kid's we got to push this kid to the next level. And so, I don't know. I wanted to share that because I really am concerned right now with a lot of people's mentality out there about what it takes to be successful, and, the search for this work-life balance bullshit. Like, I'm sorry. If you think about the reason I think the work-life balance is bullshit is because by saying work-life balance, you say that you work and then you live. So if you think about it, we work at least a third of our lives. We sleep probably about a third of our lives, maybe a little less, but general numbers. So that means you're saying by talking about the work-life balance that you really only live a third of your life. And to me, that's horribly depressing. So for me, that's why work and life have to be equal, and that's why you have to find out what you are passionate about and then go all in on it. Because that's the reason I think that a lot of people aren't working their asses off, aren't staying late, is because they just don't care about what they're doing. And therefore, if they don't care about what they're doing, they're not passionate about it, so they don't put the effort to be great. And they're into this self-fulfilling prophecy, and then kids job hunt, hop and try to look for that perfect job, and it just is not out there. You have to work, and you have to put in the effort. And so I am going to say out there, work a little bit later, stay a little bit later in the office, come in a little bit earlier. Put the effort in, work off hours, go out, if you have a busy day coming up the next day, spend an hour the night before prepping for it. Do some homework so that your day hours when you're in the office are meant for execution as opposed to any type of research or preparation or anything like that. Instead of your lunch hour going off and working, hanging out with your friends and having coffee and talking about stuff, why not sit down at your desk? Sorry about that. Not sure what happened there. That cut out for no apparent reason. So take two on Facebook Live. Hopefully you all are still on here, who's ever following me here. But anyways, as I was going with John Daly, right? He's got all the talent in the world, but he doesn't take it seriously. So that's why nobody else really takes him seriously. The greatest golfers on the planet practice every day. They put in the effort. They go for it. And that's what I'm asking you all to do if you really want to be successful at this. Again, I always I say to this day, I'm not dumb, but I'm not the smartest. I'm not like MIT or Harvard smart. But I got through school by working my ass off, and I did pretty well. As far as jobs, I love sales because you have it within your own ability to be great at sales. And all you have to do is have a conscious mindset of practicing, purposeful practice. So for instance, I recommend as you go out there and in your day-to-day, you don't even have to take time out of your day to do this. You can practice sales everywhere you go. You can, every time you go to a restaurant, see if you can get, free dessert or something like that. Every time you go buy something, see if you can get a discount or an upgrade or whatever it is to practice, have that thoughtful practice out there when it's really no harm, no foul, right? But then when it actually goes to apply, you can say, okay, when it's time to make money on it, you can say, all right, now I'm much more confident in my approach. So with that, I'm going to open up some questions again. I apologize for the little interruption there. There's a question here from Instagram. There's somebody saying, how long have I been a sales trainer? I don't really consider myself a sales trainer. I consider myself a sales guy who happens to be all right sharing information. I sell every day. I would never be just a trainer. My passion is sales, and I happen to be okay. And I found a training, by the way, the Barrows training. I found a training that really worked for me, and I love sharing it with people. I love sharing things that work. But technically, I've been a sales trainer for about 10 years at this point. So it's let's see, I'm 41 years old. I sold my company back when I was 31, and there was at Barrows, then Kensei, then Jay Barrows, and it's been about 10 years now. And I've been learning stuff every day that I've been a sales trainer, if you will, if you want to put that title on me. But I'm trying to evolve every day and work my ass off every day to learn something new. Another question is, did you have a chance to ask Gary V anything? What did he ask him? I asked Gary V, so I did sit down. So for those of you who don't know who Gary Vaynerchuk is, hopefully you do, but look him up, Gary V. I love his message about hustle and everything else. And pretty much everything he says, I tend to agree with in some way, shape, or form, mostly about working your ass off and the hustle side of it. But the question I asked him was more about artificial intelligence and the impact and his thoughts on where things are going. Gary's, I was a little frustrated when I asked him the question because Gary's one of those ones that has a very direct opinion and he jumps right in on your question. So before you're even finished answering it. So a little part of me had a frustration of like, I'm not done answering my question, dude. Wait until I'm sorry, I'm not done asking my question. So can I get an answer when I'm done? But his brain works at a different level. I realized, because my fear was that one of the things I brought up was artificial intelligence in my industry and how I'm training kids on something that I see in the next 3 to 5 years is going to be obsolete because of artificial intelligence. You've heard me talk about Shakespeare.ai on this on a lot of stuff. They've actually taken down that website for various reasons. I'm talking to them on the back end about re-upping it and potentially acquiring it myself. But I look at artificial intelligence and it's writing emails better than I could. And I've been training this for 10 years. And so, my question to Gary was like, well, what does that mean? And how do I look ahead and how do we prepare reps to deal with that? And he, again, interrupted me before I was able to answer my question. But he said, you know what, run with it. Be the person that looks at the AI emails and critiques them and puts the human flavor on top of them before they go out. And at first I'm like, well, that's kind of okay. But he's right. I mean, at the end of the day, there's always going to be a little bit of context left for sales reps or for humans to add value, right? And to make that real connection. And so it's all about leveraging these tools and understanding them and then figuring out where the human element is involved and necessary. Because there is always going to be a human element. Well, I won't say always, because who knows what's going to happen. But for the foreseeable future, there's always going to be that necessary human element involved. A quick example here. I'm going back and forth. We're trying to schedule a meeting with this client, and he's got an artificial intelligence assistant. And at first, I actually didn't know that it was an assistant because she hits me back. She's like, looking forward to meet, I was trying to schedule a meeting with so-and-so, and, does this time work for you? And I was like, no. And again, I use Time Trade, which is, here's my link to my calendar, and you can pick a time or whatever. So I just sent her that. I said, just pick one of those times. Because again, I didn't think she was I thought she was a regular secretary or a regular assistant. She's like, sorry, I didn't understand your previous email. Could you please? And I went, and I'm like, So I looked at it. She can't click on links. So I was like, all right, it's an artificial intelligence thing. And so I went directly back. First of all, I was a little bit annoyed that I got duped. Second of all, I went back to the guy who's, directly to him. And I said, hey, could you turn off the artificial intelligence and pick a time here? I travel way too much to go back and forth 15 times trying to find a time here. And he's like, sure. And you could tell, I guess there's a tagline that he puts in there to turn off the AI thing, which is call off the dogs or something. But she just hit me up 3 times again today saying, hey, what's your cell phone number? What's these things? And it's just annoying to me. So I think right now artificial intelligence is still in this weird world, but there's always going to be that human involvement in it. And that's really what Gary was trying to articulate, which is use it, leverage it, and find out where the human piece is. So that's kind of what I got out of it. And the biggest thing I got out of that whole session, by the way, is to really clarify your why. About why do you do what you do? And this leads back to working your ass off. Like, ask yourself that question. Why are you working, right? Why are you at the company? What's your why? And once you clarify what that is and what you're trying to achieve, then everything tends to fall in line and you then can work towards that why. I talk all the time about goal setting. I can't believe not more people don't set goals on a regular basis. Because that's what your driving force is. That's what helps you get to wherever you want to go. If you're not setting goals, you're just along for the ride and somebody else is dictating the path. But once you set those goals and really understand your why and your purpose, then everything falls in line behind that. So go through a goal setting exercise, look out 5 years. Where do you want to be? Why are you doing what you're doing? And once you answer those questions, then you can find out the positions and the opportunities that open up that you can then apply your passions to and become an expert in. All right. Another question here, Logan. Being at an office hours, we've always been one of my, being at an office for hours has always been one of my hot points. And so many reps will just sit so it looks like that they're staying late working hard when they could have been working harder during the day when everyone else is working. I couldn't agree more. Like there's perception reality, right? I mean, if you're sitting at the office just to show your boss that you're there at 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock at night, shame on you. That's a waste of time. And yeah, if you're not applying yourself during the normal hours, then, I don't see what the point is. You're obviously avoiding something or just playing this weird game. When I go back to that book, Be So Good They Can't Ignore You. Look, if you've gotten all your shit done and you're prepared for the week and your next day and all that, go on. I don't care when you work. I really don't. It's just have that mindset that it's not just a 9 to 5 thing. It's not just my job and then I go do my thing. It's like if you take your career seriously, you'll go home and you'll read that book about sales. You'll take that course that you weren't told to take. You'll go online and you'll spend a few extra dollars on something that'll help you improve your skills, even though your company won't invest in it. Those are the things I'm talking about here, right? Because if you don't do those type of things and you're just kind of showing up and doing what you're told to do, you're going to follow a predictable path that everybody else is on board, and you'll be one of the sheep that everybody else, one of the sheep that really just goes through the motions. My belief, and I'll probably get railed for this, but I say it all the time, I believe 80% of this world are people looking to be told what to do. And there's 20% of this world that tell people what to do, and not tell people what to do, but go out and get it. And therefore people follow. I personally want to be one of those. I don't want to wait for it. I want to go get it. I don't want somebody else to give it to me. I don't feel like I'm entitled to anything. I earn every single thing. If you guys have followed me over in Vegas, I was in Vegas 2 weeks ago, and there's a reason I gamble. I suck at gambling. I lose shitloads of money when I gamble, but there's a reason I do it. Other than just to blow off some steam and whatever, is to remind myself that I ain't lucky. I'm not. I mean, I prove it every time I gamble. I am not lucky. I earn absolutely everything that I have. And so it's a nice reminder for me every once in a while, once a quarter, to play a few scratch tickets, go to the casino, something like that, to remind myself that I got to work for every penny that I've earned. And I like that. Again, I'm not entitled to earn, nobody owes me anything. This world doesn't owe you anything. You got to go out and get what you want. So, Phil, what does my schedule typically look like? Are you constantly looking for new clients, or do you have a few lengthy contracts you're constantly working on? My schedule's disgusting. I usually travel and train Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays. Like this week, I'm going to Toronto tonight. I'll be Toronto on Tuesday, Chicago on Wednesday, and San Francisco on Thursday. I take the red eye home Thursday to come home Friday morning, and then I got a full set of meetings all day on Friday. I got a couple of clients. Salesforce is my biggest one. They're probably my most consistent, but I've never been a major account seller. I've never sold a multi-million-dollar deal. Most of my deals, the average deal size is 50, 60 G's. And I try to stay consistent with my clients to help support them, but I prefer having a lot of different types of clients because it keeps me interested as opposed to one or two that I milk. So because there's also something I learned early in my career that I never wanted one client to be more than 20% of my revenues, because then that client pretty much owns you and you end up focusing most of your time and effort on that client and away from others because you're so nervous about losing them. And it tends to put you in a pretty bad spot. So yeah, Salesforce is around, give or take 20%, maybe even a little bit less at this point than my revenues. And I actively manage, I'd say about 40 companies on a regular basis that I'm working with through either direct training or support or follow-up. So I typically work with that. And so you'll see on my Mondays and my Fridays, every once in a while you can follow me on Snap. I'll take a snap of my calendar, and you'll see usually it's back-to-back meetings, because Mondays and Fridays are the only times I actually have to talk to anybody, clients, prospects, whoever. So I have half-hour meetings pretty much back-to-back all day, starting at 9 o'clock in the morning, going until 6 o'clock at night, something like that. And so that's why I have to be as structured as I am. That's why personally I have to, work off hours. I work in, usually what my schedule looks like is I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning, I do a little bit of exercise and keep my fat ass in shape. I then, around 7:30, really start getting into checking my emails, prepping, that type of stuff, hammer out meetings throughout the whole day until 5, about 6:30, then go hang out with my wife and daughter, dinner, stuff like that, try to really be focused on that. And then when my daughter goes to bed around 8:30, 9 o'clock, something like that, laptop comes back up. I start preparing for the next day and hammering through whatever emails and follow-up that I missed throughout the day. And so, I try to shut it down on Fridays around 5 o'clock so I can just mentally, check out for a little bit and have some fun on Saturdays. If you follow me on Snap and those type of things, you'll know that. And then, Sundays I'm back at it around 9 o'clock prepping for the week. So to me, again, that's been the mentality since I was in business, is I don't look at the work-life balance. I don't look at things of, okay, I put in my work and now it's time to go play. Work hard, play hard has been a mentality for me my whole life, and earning every fucking dollar has been as well. So, we'll wrap up here. I have another webinar I have to put on here right at 1:00 for a client that I'm working with and doing some remote training for. But just in summary, show up early, stay late. And I don't mean that physically. You don't have to necessarily be the first one in the office and be the last one out unless you're doing meaningful stuff and you truly care about what you do. But mentally commit to your career and become that expert that people can't ignore. I'll finish with again, so good that I'm going to read this book, So Good They Can't Ignore You. When you have that craftsman mindset of understanding, of looking for and trying to be an expert in sales, there's so many areas that you can look to perfect and look to, well, you can't perfect any of it, but look to improve on, your qualification skills, your cold calling, your dealing with objections, your gatekeepers, your managing deal cycles, your closing skills. There's all these different areas that you can focus on and try to improve on and learn about and practice, that you should constantly have that mindset of becoming that craftsman, so that then you can start to figure out where your passion lies and apply it and run with it. For me, I didn't really find out my passions until I was well into my 30s, as far as what I was passionate about, right? And then I dove all in on it, and training is a part of that. I forgot who asked the question earlier, but how long have I been a trainer? This is from Instagram one. I never thought I wanted to be a trainer, but then because I was so focused on being successful in sales and whatever I did, and then learned that I really enjoyed managing and training and working with people and helping them develop based on my experience. When the opportunity to train came up, it was like a fish to water. I just ran with it. I mean, I vividly remember opening up a book. I was like, I don't know if I want to be a trainer. I had the opportunity to be a trainer. I'm like, most trainers I know suck. They're either failed sales professionals or professional presenters. So I didn't want to have anything to do with it. But I liked the training, so I was passionate about the training. It worked for me. And I remember calling my mom and asking my mom. She's been a career counselor forever. And I remember calling her up and saying, hey, Ma, I got this opportunity to be a trainer, and I was just wanting to kind of get your thoughts on it. And I remember she just started laughing. And she was like, you know what, John Michael, that's the only person that calls me John Michael. She goes, I never wanted to tell you what to do with your career, but if there's anybody that I thought would be a fantastic trainer or teacher, she's like, I thought it was you. And I was really struck by that, because my mom's usually got a pretty good beat on me. And so when I had their interview for the job, they wanted me to train them on something, gave me really little guidance. So I went to the bookstore and I got literally Training for Dummies. And there was 10 characteristics there on what you need to be successful in training. And literally every one of them was spot on with my personality and what I love to do. And so apparently after that, I was like, well, shit, apparently I should be a trainer. So again, I didn't find that out until I was in my 30s. But I found that out by being a master craftsman at my profession, which was sales, which is why I took all the different trainings. I searched for what worked and what didn't work. I try to apply it in every aspect of my life because I loved doing it. So in closing, work your ass off. If you really, truly want to be successful, work your ass off. Don't follow your passion. Find it and make it happen. All right? Have a great week, everybody. Go crush it. And always feel free to hit me up on Snap, on Instagram, on any of that stuff. I'm happy to answer whatever questions y'all have anytime you need. All right? Make it a great week.